Hello, hello. A very warm welcome and good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Pawan Raj, and I am your host for this webinar. And I work as an assistant manager at Anant Fellowship. And thank you for joining in that late in the when the weekend is starting. So let me take the honor to introduce the moderator of this session, Mr. Varun Pradhan. So Varun Pradhan is an independent legal practitioner based in Baroda, Gujarat, with a strong focus on commercial law, corporate advisory, and litigation. A graduate of Gujarat National Law University, he has represented clients before the Gujarat High Court and various trial courts. His areas of expertise include contract law, family disputes, IP law, criminal litigation, and environmental law. In addition to his legal practice, Varun serves as a professional director at Sri Mahila Sahakari Bank Limited and advises a range of startups and corporates. He also heads the legal affairs of Chhatra Sansad, a socio-political youth empowerment organization. And he is one among us. He is an alumnus of Anant Fellowship in Sustainability and Built Environment. Varun combines legal insight with a strong social conscience demonstrated in projects supporting displaced communities. A very warm welcome to you, Varun. And now I will hand it over to you. The session is all yours.
Thank you so much, Pawan. That was a wonderful introduction. Couldn't have been any better. Summed up everything that I do and I have done in my life. And also now I welcome all the attendees. Let me introduce my co-panelists here. We have with us Hardika Dayalani. Hardika is the director of the Anand Fellowship in Sustainability and Built Environment, where she leads the program's day-to-day operations and strategic direction. She brings deep experience in public policy, education, and community development. Hardika has previously worked at the RAND Corporation, taught business undergraduates at Pepperdine University, and implemented housing programs with the Hunar Shala Foundation. She holds a master's in public administration from the University of Pennsylvania and is a graduate of the prestigious Young India Fellowship. Hardika's interdisciplinary background and global perspective allow her to bring both rigor and empathy to her work in education and sustainability. A very warm welcome to you, Hardika.
Thank you so
And,
much. Yeah.
yeah. and my other co-panelist is Dr. Ashima Sood. Dr. Ashima is an associate professor at the director of the Center for Urbanism and Cultural Economics at Anant National University. A scholar with a rich interdisciplinary background, she holds a PhD in economics from Cornell University, along with master's degrees in economics from the Delhi School of Economics and in English from UC Davis. Her research focuses on privatized urban governance, informal public spaces, and the economics of cultural heritage in Indian cities, with work published in leading international journals such as Urban Studies and Cities. She has also been an Urban Studies Foundation International Fellow at Oxford and served as a visiting professor at Carleton University. Dr. Sood's unique combination of academic rigor and global perspective positions her as a thought leader in sustainable and inclusive urban development. So, welcome, Dr. Ashima Sood. And so, we have a fantastic panel of academicians and practitioners. So, let's hope for a wonderful, wonderful session that enriches all of us. So, I mean, moving on to the session. Um, there are certain things that I mean I as a practitioner would like to ask the both of you. And the first one that's there, I mean, the title of our session is sustainability law and public policy. So sustainability being quite the buzzword these days, I personally want to know from you, Hardika, like, what is this? What do you mean by sustainability? And like, why is it so important that, every corporate office now has like a sustainability department? And, what is it that, I mean, the sustainability brings to an organization, to the society? And going forward, why do we need it?
Thank you for starting us off, Varun. So sustainability So the United Nations sort of defines sustainability as, just the long-term goal of us, as humans coexisting with other species on this earth for a long time. Now, the reason why we've had to have this definition, or even discuss why do we need to talk about long term, is because that, in the past, couple of centuries, we have had a very outsized impact on our environment, and a lot of it has been to the detriment of this environment. And so we've seen, a lot of loss of biodiversity, and we see, and so we've come to realize that if we don't do, something about sustainability to further that agenda, we might end up living on an earth which has just us, and we won't last here for a very long time. So that's kind of like the motivation behind just talking about sustainability. When you talk about, definitions even more, so everybody's heard of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, right? So there is like a whole framework of goals. They talk not just about, the environment or keeping, sort of global temperatures below 2 Celsius, global temperature rise below 2 Celsius. They talk about, our carbon footprint, our energy, the energy consumed in our day-to-day activities, but also, resources like water and mineral resources, sort of, as we exploit them, as we extract them, what are the implications of these actions on the environment, on biodiversity, and on the local communities jahan se hum ye sab extract kar rahe hain, right? All of that. Sustainable development goals also talk about social equity, not just in terms of whatever development we're doing, who gets access to it, are decent jobs generated during as a part of this development. So all of this sort of comes under the broader sort of definition of sustainable development goals, as has been sort of defined by United Nations. So that's kind of generally about sustainability and the reason why we've been talking about it. Ashima, do you want to add something to it?
No, thank you so much, Hardika, for that broad overview. I think it's important to underline that it's important to think about sustainability from all variety of perspectives, right? I think the way that the idea started, and we think back to sort of the earliest reports and debates that were happening in the 1970s. The whole sort of kinds of associations around the idea of sustainability has expanded to the point now that we have the sustainable development goals that we are all working towards. And so here the idea of sustainability goes beyond merely environmental sustainability to, social, cultural, and a variety of other ways of thinking about sustainability. And the second point I'd like to say is that it is only important, so important that an agenda such as this is mainstream, right? It's not simply siloed into questions of environmental law or to questions of land and real estate, but that it is in fact at the center of all of the discussions that we are having, and no matter what be the kind of specialization. I'm looking at some of the questions, whether it's in company secretary or ESG, right? It is at the center of the
Right, right. That was a pretty insightful, overview of sustainability. But now, as a legal practitioner who practices day in and day out in trial courts, where litigants are, still just fighting for their basic rights, and so what I want to ask you is that how does sustainability fit into the Indian context? Like in the global context, like India is still, like I said, we are still vying for basic resources. A lot of people don't have, they do not even have the income to put food on the table. So as a like I feel like sustainability comes like at the back of the line when you talk about at least ascertaining these very basic needs of people. And So, I mean, how do you see sustainability fit into the Indian context? That's what I want to know from you guys.
So I'll take that. So I don't think that, I understand कि your idea कि जिसको खाने का problem है वो sustainability के बारे में कैसे सोचेगा. But the question of sustainability is still deeply tied to that person, because a lot of livelihoods are being affected by sustainability. And I will say that our founding fathers, they were very were very forward thinking, that when they were writing the Constitution of India, they've already talked about principles of sustainability in directive principles for state policy. And and our Supreme Court has expanded the interpretation of like Article 21 to which is like the right to life, to include the right to live in a healthy environment. So I think sure, if people who are struggling to make their ends meet are not actively thinking about sustainability, but that doesn't mean that we as a country are not thinking about it, right? We've had we have several laws on our books which talk about protecting the environment, be it the Water Pollution and Air Pollution Act, या for आपका Forest Conservation Act हो गया, Wildlife Protection Act हो गया, the Green Tribunal, National Green Tribunal Act, which established the National Green Tribunal to adjudicate on issues of sustainability in development. So all of these exist in our country, like so it's like we can't have okay, let's get food. We can't be thinking in those terms, okay, let's get food on everybody's table, then we will talk about sustainability. It's a question of right now, like we have to do it in a manner that is sustainable. And so that's why we have even current policies by this administration, be it the Smart Cities mission or the Amrut program, which is about rejuvenating urban spaces. It does cover, while sustainability might not be the main focus, but it like a significant chunk deals with developing green infrastructure, developing public transit, all of which are about sustainable development. So we have we are all, as India is a signatory for of the Paris agreement. So we do have national commitments that we've committed to, and then based on that we have developed a national action plan for climate change, जिसके अंदर 8 missions आते हैं. We have missions for promoting energy efficiency, solar power. Within that, one of those 8 missions is the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. So that one is, again, a little bit more specifically talking about sustainable development, focusing on the built environment, right? Which is kind of what we talk about here at the Anant Fellowship also. So, I think, this is not one of those things which it seems like an either or, कि ना या तो development कर लो या sustainability कर लो. But I think there is a way to do both, and we are doing both actually. Yeah.
Dr. Ashima, anything to add to that?
I think that it's important to keep in mind that, as Hardika said, development and sustainability are not at odds with each other, right? And I think that this is sort of the debate that has been, in India, we've been having for a very long time, since going back almost to independence, right? This kind of vision of, sustainable villages, sustainable cities versus, this idea of an industrialized, very strong, modern economy. And as an economist and a development economist, and seeing the trajectory of that, we realize that development without sustainability is ultimately hollow. And this goes back very much to the very idea of GDP growth, which is something that we often discuss, when we talk about macroeconomics, which is does not quite take account of various ways in which environmental damage actually cuts down on quality of life, standards of living, and so on and so forth. So this is sort of the big agenda, and I think that in India we have now in a lot of ways been leading on many of the debates, right? Whether it comes to questions of community, right? On questions of community rights, right? That's hopefully we can take the conversation forward from there. Over to you, Varun.
Yeah, that was very, very insightful because normally we see, like, at least I see sustainability as removed from the concept of development. But what I hear from you is that any development without sustainability is not actually development. I mean, sustainability is integral to the concept of development. So, and we as a country ought to now see development as being, married with the concept of sustainability. And since I'm a former Anant fellow, and this is like a Anant fellowship session, the idea of interdisciplinary approach, like it has had a huge impact on me. Like, whenever I go to court now, I don't see any problem, any dispute with just one single lens, but it's always all the experiences, that everything that you hear and see every day, everything. I draw experiences from everything in order to look at any problem. So, Ashima and Hardika, both of you, can you talk, about how this interdisciplinary approach is uh, going to be important in order to reach our goals in sustainability, and why is an interdisciplinary approach important for us to get to that goal of sustainability?
I know I'm gonna let Ashima take that question, but Ashima, one of the comments said, and I also concur, your voice is a little bit low, so if you can move your mic closer to you, that would be great.
Thanks for that little alert. I hope I'm a little better audible now. Okay. Yeah, I'm very sorry. I think I'm having some sound problems today. So I'll speak a little bit louder. And please pardon me if I'm, too loud. Um, you know, um, at the end of the day, as we were just now saying, right, and Hardika, thanks so much for sort of that very broad, understanding that you've helped us to see that, this is essential, the idea of sustainability is central to the idea of right to life. And this is really, where, the cross-disciplinary approach, right? And we can think of it in multiple ways. There is the idea of multidisciplinarity, which is very common in a lot of university spaces where experts from different disciplines work together and try to talk to each other. But I think that what we have been doing, Varun, as you say, is much more radical,
Right.
because we are trying to build an interdisciplinary mindset, which means that we train our fellows, and in fact across the curriculum in many of our programs we focus on interdisciplinary, very much in line with the NEP 2020. Um, because it is really this kind of siloed thinking which is at the heart of the problem, right?
Mm.
And it is, economic growth at the expense of, for example, social coherence, social harmony, economic growth at the cost of cultural heritage, at the cost of, community rights. And this is really the mindset that I think will change when we are not simply talking about expertise in one field alone, but actually have people thinking really at the very sort of in the sort of idea of problem solving, taking a 360-degree perspective. And so even the research methods that we teach at the NUNS Fellowship and across our programs are really not so much focused on, okay, how do you do a survey, but how do you figure out where is it appropriate to use a survey rather than other research methods. And this is the kind of, sort of a very broad toolkit that it's not just lawyers, but company secretaries, as we are hearing, people across disciplines, and sustainability experts need to develop, and economists.
Wonderful. Hardika?
Um, yeah, I think I concur with Ashima that, like, a lot of our education system, we still have like a very 19th century model.
Right.
So, like, you go to law school, you're taught how to talk to lawyers. So lawyers only talk to lawyers. And engineers, I went to engineering school. Engineers only want to talk to engineers. I actually, when I graduated, I thought like people don't get me because that's how I was taught, I think that happens a lot, right? Architects and artists will only talk to each other at the maximum. एक दूसरे से बात कर लेंगे या तो सिर्फ अपने अपने में बात करते रहेंगे. And so, like, if you are, say, like doing town planning, town planners will only talk to town planners. They will only look at, like, large data sets. They will not see कि भाई यहाँ पे किसी का घर है या यहाँ पे कोई मंदिर है जो like no यहाँ पे जो community है वो नहीं हटाने देगी. आप यहाँ पे जो है नहीं कर सकते हैं. You can't sort of make this into like an industrial zone or something, or develop it like that. So I think that this all of this happens. There's a lot of conflict that happens because we stay in our own lanes and we don't talk to each other, because most problems are not unidimensional like that. And if within our own professions, we're taught to think a certain way. And so, like, lawyers will only ask like, is there precedent, right? If there isn't a precedent, then then we don't know. Then there's a very different way of thinking about it, right? But then what that like, frankly, for me, that sounds like a very reactive way of thinking. It's not proactive. Well, these are the problems we are going to face. Climate change. These are problems we are going to face. They are coming down the pipeline. So, well, what do we do about it? Like, you can't keep thinking about precedent at that point. You have to look for fresh ideas elsewhere. And I think that's why, say, so, a lawyer who reads science fiction is going to have more ideas than a lawyer who only reads legal texts. So just generally, most problems that as our world gets more complex, most problems we face are also going to get more complex. And so unless we start thinking in terms of, like, systems and how one element in a system affects the other, we're not going to find solutions that are tenable. Like, then what we will end up with is like, an example that comes to my mind is, we've had a housing assistance program for below poverty line families since the 1960s. I think it started with Indira Gandhi. इंदिरा आवास योजना हुआ करता था, अब वो प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना है. ठीक है, चले जा रहा है, लेकिन जो है होमलेसनेस खत्म नहीं हो रही है. And so I worked on Indira Awas Yojana back when it was called Indira Awas Yojana. And if I went and I spoke to, say, a district or a block level employee, and I asked block development officer, and I'm like, आपको क्या लगता है कि यहाँ पे ये मतलब जो काफी farmer मतलब जो लोग होते हैं, families होती हैं, वो घर शुरू करते हैं लेकिन खत्म नहीं कर पाते हैं. तो आपको क्या लगता है ऐसा क्यों होता है? And a lot of their responses were, ये लोग ऐसे ही हैं. Now, log मूर्ख नहीं है. They also want a home. But maybe what is happening, like what I saw happening, उसके ना जो गांव में घर होते हैं ना, वो सिर्फ रहने के लिए यूज नहीं होते हैं, वो स्टोरेज के लिए भी यूज होते हैं. आप अपना जब धान आता है तो वो भी अपने घर के अंदर रखते हैं, आपके एनिमल्स घर के अंदर रहते हैं, और आपके फार्म इम्प्लीमेंट्स घर के अंदर रहते हैं. So they tend to start making big houses, and then they cannot finish it because it costs money to build a big house. So there is a very specific structural reason. If you go to the field with an open mind and try to understand what the problems are, you might actually find a solution, or at least a cause for that solution. But that's kind of the approach that we need to actually solve solve these wicked problems.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Hardika, because I would just like, since we're talking about law and systems, I would just like to share one of my experiences where I'm appearing in a pollution matter. So the matter is regarding the Water Act. So I'm appearing for a person who has like this small unit in GIDC Bharuch, and he's been impleaded as an accused for violation of the Water Act. since the allegation is that he was disposing of water without treating it, which is against the law. The reality is that there's a very big player who has a major unit, who is a repeat offender, who's continually doing this, and he just paid off everyone in the system, the police, everyone, and his name was not included in the case, and now the entire machinery is trying to find out if my client is actually the perpetrator. And I mean, it's very clear, like ever since the case has opened and I've started, examining witnesses, etc., that this is a frivolous case. And I mean, this is the reality of the system, is that, there's a Water Act, which the legislature has done very well in, thinking about all the possibilities of, avoiding in line with our sustainability goals, etc. But the practice is so far removed from, I mean, nobody there. When I go there, I feel like the original objective of this entire exercise has just been forgotten, and now the entire machinery is wasting its resources on, like, I am trying to prove someone who's not done this as an innocent, and the one who's polluting got a free pass to even carry out more pollution in the future. So I, when I sit in my office and think about it, how do I solve this problem? Like, is there a way to solve this problem? Is there maybe a holistic approach to this? Maybe should I start thinking in a in a systems manner, what you call systems thinking, and then maybe get talk to more people from other disciplines and maybe find out a solution to this. So what do you have to say about that, Hardika?
So system thinking is sort of my pet, whatever. So thank you for that beautiful segue. So हम system thinking के बारे में बात करेंगे, उससे पहले let's talk about what are complex systems, because that's where this sort of word comes from, systems thinking. It comes from the idea that we live in complex systems. What would be an example of a complex system? A city is a complex system. It has many elements. And therefore, like, a city is not a collection of buildings, it's not a collection of people, it is much more than the sum of its parts. ठीक है, but all of its parts, all of its elements are first they're very strongly interdependent. ठीक है, so जैसे ना आप देखिए चार गांव हैं एक दूसरे के आसपास, they are not necessarily as interdependent as this कि अगर same number of people अगर एक city में रह रहे हैं, they are much more interdependent because they are much more closely related by ties of proximity, by ties of like sharing common spaces, by ties of like economic ties, because so इस वजह से a system, complex system में elements are much more strongly interdependent. And the other feature of a complex system is that there are feedback loops. Now feedback हमने जो है speakers के context में सुना है कि like अगर आप एक माइक के सामने माइक को लेके और ये किसी स्पीकर के सामने खड़े हो जाए तो फीडबैक से बहुत लाउड फ्रीक्वेंसी होता है, and then the only thing you can do is step away from it, right? So what does that look like in an urban context? तो आप सोचिए women's education के बारे में, right? आप जो है women को educate करना चाहते हैं क्योंकि आप उनको empower करना चाहते हैं, ठीक है? वो empower होती है, educate होती है, वो बाहर जाती है, काम करती है, तो financial independence होता है, तो उसका empowerment बढ़ता है, right? वो एक औरत empower हुई. Sorry, there's some noise in my background. I'm gonna let that pass. एक औरत empower हुई तो वो चार और औरतों को अपनी बारे में बताएगी कि नहीं, तुमको आगे बढ़ना चाहिए, ठीक है? तो ये दिस बिकम्स अ पॉजिटिव फीडबैक लूप कि आपने एक औरत को एम्पावर किया तो वो आगे जाके चार को एम्पावर करेगी. देयर इज अ मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट, ठीक है? So this is so these kinds of loops are much more common in a complex system, ठीक है? यही अगर आप रूरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हैं, डिस्टेंसेस ज्यादा होते हैं, यही सेम चीज करना थोड़ा ज्यादा मुश्किल होता है in a rural context. वहां पे भी होते हैं systems, but I think urban systems are much more sort of tightly coupled and have like stronger feedback loops. And then the other thing, the other feature of a complex system is that they show a sort of emergent or adaptive behavior. And what that means is कि ना अगर आपका बाउंड्री कंडीशंस चेंज होता है, मतलब मान लीजिए आपका टेम्परेचर बढ़ने लगा है या समर जल्दी आने लगा है, तो उसके रिस्पॉन्स में there will be adaptive behavior that the entire system takes have sort of exhibits. So for example, it might be कि अगर गर्मी ज्यादा बढ़ रही है तो there will be a response कि भाई गर्मी के मौसम में आप जो है लोग बाग सर्विसेज ऑफर करने लगते हैं, इवन वॉलंटियर सर्विसेज आई हैव सीन लाइक पानी के स्टेशंस ऑफर करेंगे, yeah, because there is a people respond because they are independent agents that connect all of these elements in a city, right? So that's what a complex system is. And what systems thinking is about is a specific approach. It is about looking at the world in terms of elements and their interrelationships. ठीक है? तो मतलब जब हम कोई पॉलिसी एनालिसिस करते हैं ना, तो वी स्टार्ट विद सिस्टम्स मैपिंग. वी मैप के भाई एक जो डिसीजन लेना है, इसमें कौन कौन स्टेक होल्डर है, वो कैसे इस डिसीजन को इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहा है. ठीक है? एंड देन यू लुक फॉर इंटरकनेक्शंस. ये स्टेक होल्डर्स के बीच में कोई इंटरकनेक्शंस हैं, क्या फीडबैक लूप्स हैं, क्या कॉजल इन्फ्लुएंसेस हैं कि ये करने से ये चेंज होगा, राइट? सो फॉर एग्जांपल दिल्ली में जो है महिलाओं के लिए बसेस फ्री कर दी, तो उसका क्या फर्क पड़ा, yeah. And I think what they started with was कि ना एक दिन महीने में फ्री हुआ करता था, and then they saw like a massive increase in ridership for women, and then they sort of made it more permanent, right? So complex systems में the last thing is you identify problems by identifying these relationships, and then based on your understanding of these relationships you test for emergence, like this, like doing a pilot. Acha, can we make public transit more safe for women? How do we make women sort of access it more? Acha, if and so what you find is if there are more women riders, women will feel safer, right? So how do we increase women riders? Well, maybe let's make it free for them, then more women will take a bus, right? So then it becomes, then you sort of trigger a positive feedback loop like that. And so that's how you end up with policy solutions that will maintain themselves. Otherwise क्या होता है, हमारी काफी सारी policies जो है वो डंडा मारने पे होती हैं, which is what the Environmental Protection Act or the Water Act or the Air Act is. ये डंडा मारने पे चलती हैं. We will use punitive measures to make sure to ensure compliance. Now then that becomes a question of government capacity. अगर local government की जो capacity ही नहीं है enforce करने की, या government बिक गई है, और I mean at least local government बिक गई है, तो कुछ नहीं होएगा, फिर वहाँ पे compliance खत्म होगी बात, है ना? So if you are able to use like different tools in your toolkit, as Dr. Sood pointed out, आप behavioral economics use करिए, आप complex systems के ideas use करिए, you will find policy solutions that might be counterintuitive in the beginning, but
Right.
they will give you lasting, tenable, sustainable change. So yeah, and so like I will just like sort of close this by saying that आपको अगर systems thinking करनी है, you want to be a systems thinker, the first thing you have to do is approach it with intellectual humility. आप अगर ना थोड़ा सा हीरो बन के जाएंगे ना कि भाई हमको तो सब पता है, हम तो यूएस से मास्टर्स करके आए हैं, पीएचडी करके आए हैं, हमको सब पता है, तो आपको कोई जवाब नहीं देने वाला है, आपका पूरा एक्सरसाइज थोड़ा सा धरा का धरा रह जाएगा, ठीक है? So you have to start with intellectual humility. I am not the smartest person in this room. And you have to go with curiosity and practice active listening. ठीक है? Or and so so all of this, like an open mind, curious stance will help you identify the root cause, and that will help you then generate ideas to solve it, and then something will work and some things might not work. ठीक है? So that's kind of, my spiel about, yes, everybody must get an education in systems thinking because we need more solution makers, yeah.
That was wonderful. That was very insightful. Dr. Ashima, I would like to ask you, like, since you've done a lot of studies about, cities and humans generally. So, what do you feel? Is there like a lack of incentive for our systems to, employ these, thinking measures in terms of getting tangible goals? Why are we not able to still like permeate through systems in order to get all these tangible results about all these ideas, or like whether is there an opportunity to do something about it, and how can we do something about it that it results into some tangible results, changes in attitudes of people, and then subsequently changes in systems themselves.
No, I also really enjoyed listening to my colleague here, Hardika, and thanks, Varun, for raising this very important question. I think it is really, and I'm coming at it as an economist and also somebody who looks at urban systems. What seems to be really missing, and this is where the interdisciplinarity comes in, and the multidisciplinarity is that coordination mechanisms are often missing. When you look at our metropolitan, when I work on the urban and I look at the metropolitan scale, often what we find is that in what we would call a metropolitan area, there are multiple local bodies, right? And some of them will be municipal bodies, which is at the urban scale. A lot of them will be village panchayats, right? And how do they talk to each other? Now, if there is a problem, for example, of unauthorized construction, right, or there is, often environmental problems, the challenges that they cross borders, right, and that includes not just national borders but also local borders, right? So you have, maybe some place where there's construction activity. We know, for example, Delhi's pollution problem is caused by a lot of, stubble burning by farmers in surrounding states, right? So how do you ensure that there is coordination? And just working and a little bit building up on the context provided by Ms. Dayalani, my colleague here. This is really also systems where we are in fact encouraging a lot of win-lose games, right? What we call zero-sum games, right? And
Right.
in economics, we have sort of an entire theory of competitive games. Many of us would remember the beautiful mind, right, and the work of John Nash. So a lot of it is, most actors, and particularly in a political, electoral system, which is adversarial, where parties are fighting each other,
Correct.
groups are fighting each other. We are so used to that kind of competitive thinking that we miss out on opportunities for incentive alignment, where individuals and groups can come together to cooperate to solve problems, right? And those are in fact positive sum games, which is really at the heart both of development and of sustainability, right? To have sustainable development, we need groups to work together, individuals to work together to achieve common goals. And so I would say that, this is really where the law comes in, but also I'm an institutional economist, sort of the work of a variety of, folks working in applied social science, which management, right? The law, of course, is one, design, right? Even architecture, I think of as applied social science. We all come together to think about how is it that we can create the right incentives so that people don't have to be, as Hardika was saying, have to be forced with this stick, what we call the command and control measures, but that in fact incentives sort of stack up in a way that people want to cooperate and do the right.
Absolutely. Hardika, would you like to add to that, the same question that I asked Ashima?
So, okay, I will sort of try to ground this a little bit in our sort of current political environment. Okay.
Right.
So, Ashima pointed out one aspect of it, which is, oftentimes, states which neighbor each other and influence each other's, access to water, clean air, tend to be ruled by different dispensations, and then there is no incentive to cooperate. Okay. So that's like a challenge. An opportunity that I see is, I think that at least at the national level, this ruling dispensation is open to ideas, and that's the reason why it is ambitious. If they want, if they spot an idea which they think, oh, we can scale this, learn from this, and then sort of kya कहना चाहिए, talk about it at the national and on the national and international scale. Then we will put all we will make the smoothen out the path. And the best example for that is solar, right? They saw it was a good idea. They saw we had potential, and they were like, we will run with this, right? So India overachieved its target for solar. And so I was also sort of keeping an eye on the questions that were being put out. So somebody had a question about how do you get incorporate sort of new emergent technologies in our framework. I think all the programs we have, be it smart cities, be it Amrit, or the different sort of missions that we have under the national plan, there is opportunity for entrepreneurs to innovate. ठीक है? Now, of course, you can be somebody who you can use that opportunity for nefarious reasons also. ठीक है? If you want to do it, you can. But if you're motivated and if your motivation in life is कि भाई मुझे तो I want to make sure that India is climate resilient, there's enormous opportunity. But yes, you do need to be a little bit entrepreneurial about it. And I know of several people who have done really well, right? For example, I went to Young India Fellowship in 2012, 2013. One of my fellows, she has a very successful company called Carve. I'm misremembering the name, but she works out of Aurangabad. She has worked with the Maharashtra government so she basically organizes rag pickers to do solid waste management in cities in Maharashtra, and she's been doing it consistently for almost a decade now. And and she is facilitated at all your World Economic Forum, all of these places, because again, she has put in the work. And she was an environmental lawyer, for the record, for anyone who's interested. Now she's an entrepreneur. But so that's the kind of person that is going to literally change the system. Of course, this change starts small, and it will take time for it to sort of take take hold, because when you're developing a solution, it is a little bit like you have to invent the wheel. Because you will have a lot of assumptions that you will have to correct, and so it is a long path. But I think that it's not. I think what we want to focus on is not like, acha mujhe ye technology ke saath mein karna hai, right? Don't get married to I want to work with a specific technology. I think what is more fruitful is to say, I want to work on this issue, and I will learn what it takes to work on this issue, right? Again, my friend Natasha Zareen, she started with okay, I want to look at urban areas and the issues around solid waste, right? So that was her motivation for getting into environmental law, and then that was her motivation for coming to a fellowship, and then that was her motivation to start this company and organize these women and turn them into entrepreneurs, give them decent jobs, give them training, build their capacity, right? Again, this is going to sound like a bit of a plug, but that's what this fellowship does, right? It gives you a space for exploration. For 1 year, you come into the classroom and you get introduced to a lot of these different topics and different perspectives of looking at sustainability. And then you will find something there which is going to be your aha moment, oh, this is the thing, this is the key that I needed to sort of start attacking this problem that I care for, right? So now what is that aha moment going to be for you sort of depends on your driving question, right? So yeah, and that's what, and that's why we keep talking about sort of multidisciplinarity And the larger idea behind this fellowship is that we create hundreds, not tens, hundreds of leaders who are going to throw spaghetti at the wall, who are going to attack all of these problems that we are facing in different contexts, in their own home context, right? You go out, you learn, you go back to your context, and you start attacking that problem with renewed rigor, with a different perspective, and you will find something that works. And then slowly all of these leaders will have a multiplier effect. They will build capacities of people around them, be leaders, and actually result in systemic change. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. It's a slightly long-winded answer to your question,
But
but
it
yeah.
does. I was going to ask you, if you had any advice for professionals who are part of networks and systems and who are intent on bringing a change, how can they sort of organize into pressure groups, or like, what can they do to, but you answered that, so I don't need to answer that question. And you've left me with a lot of things to think about. And I feel like all of us individually have a lot of power, but that power multiplies like multifold when you combine that with people from different fields and with the various expertise. So in that sense, I think, yeah, the multidisciplinary thing, and like we've covered a lot of things, and they've answered a lot of my questions. I hope they've answered a lot of our participants, our attendees' questions as well. And I would like to, we would like to, as a part of a previous Anant Fellowship cohort, this just reminds me that I need to be in touch with all of those people that I came across through the fellowship. Because even though initially it was like, my field is not directly related to what I learned there or the people that I interacted with there, but now it makes more sense going forward, and it progressively keeps making more sense to keep in touch with these people, so that we bring like a real impact in this world. So I would like to thank my co-panelists, and it was a wonderful, enriching session, and I personally really benefited it
So I
from
wanna
it.
I wanna sort of close
Yeah.
with one thought, which is like, my life story is that I grew up, I was born in Porbandar, okay, and so I kind of try to draw a parallel with M.K. Gandhi. He left Porbandar. उनको actually जात निकाला मिला था when he left Porbandar, right? He went to England to learn, and then he went to South Africa, where he did things, he learned by doing, and then he came back to India, and then he changed everything about India, right? He literally seismic changed tha. So I take inspiration from that story, and I think
I think she got stuck.
Yes, maybe some problem with the internet.
So there are some questions in the chat. If Varun or Dr. Ashima, if you would like to take some of them, if the time permits.
Let's just wait for like a second for Hardika to return, because can we just take a minute to wait for her? Hmm. We can definitely take questions, but the problem is that I won't be the best person to answer them, because this is not a exclusively legal session. But maybe, and also I can't see the questions for some reason, because I'm not a very regular user of Zoom. So um, Pawan, can you just take a question or two, and maybe me and Ashima can try to answer that.
Yes. So Ishita Mathur has asked, I want to know the scope of ESG in the profession of company secretary and what skills can they build as a fresher or a student to undergo internship with listed entities. I I think this is not relevant to this webinar, but anyhow,
I mean, even if it is, I honestly do not have a lot of idea about it, and anything that I say would probably not, be helpful. So we could.
right. I hope this answered your question, Ishita. Chita has asked a question, but in the face of increasing climate change and urbanization, how can law and public policy be strategically aligned to enforce sustainable building practices, promote equitable development, and overcome socio-political and economic barriers in the built environment? Like
That's
the
a wonderful
questions of
question that
inception.
I think Hardika, now that we have her back, could you just
Mhm.
repeat the question for her benefit? So,
Yes. So one of the attendees, Archita, has asked, but in the face of increasing climate change and urbanization, how can law and public policy be strategically aligned to enforce sustainable building practices, promote equitable development, and overcome socio-political and economic barriers in the built environment? It's a 20 marks question.
See, there's a lot of stakeholders that affect the built environment, right? At say a place like Anant National University has 80 acres of land, they can decide what kind of buildings to build. So they have influence. Then the city of Ahmedabad has influence on building codes, and so like for example, this the city of Chennai requires you to do water rainwater harvesting, right? Then there is national level players. Sorry, before your so you have your institutional players, you have city level players, you have state level planning organizations like urban planning, urban development authorities. They have a role to play. Then you have national level sort of standard setting bodies like BMTPC. They have a role to play in introducing new technologies, enabling low carbon construction and things like that. And then of course there is like the government, which which is also doing a lot of construction, right? Uh, so there's a lot of players here, and of course my entire spiel was ek aadmi se sab kuch nahi hoega. But the idea is you can show leadership at all of these levels. Wherever you think you have the capability, you have a connect, you have the expertise, and you can be entrepreneurial, go talk to people and like, effect change, and so like everybody from like researchers who do social science research, who do hard sciences research in construction materials, in like in engineers who do like talk about energy efficiency. Everybody has a role to play. And so how do and so we do it by doing research, we do it by advocating at all of these different levels, and and then slowly say Chennai is a leader in one thing, Ahmedabad is a leader in another thing, and then at national levels these cities also learn from each other. So that's how we sort of make systemic change happen. Yeah, I don't know if they'll get me 20 marks or not, but
so do we? Does time permit for us to take other questions, or should we wrap
We
up the
can
session?
we can have the one last question. It's an interesting question about the fellowship that they want to know. So, how does Anant Fellowship prepares its fellows for long-term careers in social impact and sustainability? And I would request each panelist, Varun, Dr. Ashima, and Hardika, because you people are connected with fellowship, to answer this question very quickly.
Sure. Maybe Hardika can start since she's the director of the fellowship.
How do we prepare for long term? I think, I kind of go back to that idea of this is a space for exploration, right? Because as an engineer, I didn't know about a lot of things. I learned that most of my learning about so sustainability comes from doing, because when I was looking for a space to pivot, this fellowship didn't exist, right? The only sort of game in town was the Young India Fellowship. So I went there, and there I was at least like, okay, there is something out there, I need to go find it. Then I had to go find it. Okay. But now this one, because it focuses on sort of sustainability, what we do is there's a little bit more focus on everything we teach. There is a focus on sustainability. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, the way I had to. You get introduced to a lot of things, and it helps you pivot. It helps you find your direction. That's how it prepares you for long term, because when you go talk to somebody, it's not just that you can use all the buzzwords. You can show that you're a thoughtful person because you can make those connections. You understand that these connections exist, right? And so you are just more likely to be somebody who is going to get through a master's program, if you want to do that. And a lot of our students do that, or work in the development sector, which again a lot of our alumni end up doing, or just go and start your own thing. So a lot of our alumni, like Varun, he's an independent practitioner. They work for themselves because they realize that a lot of sort of traditional structures are too constraining, and they're like, I'm just going to find a way to do this myself. Okay. So yeah, I think it prepares you, it gives you a different way of thinking, and that's how it kind of prepares you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, drawing from what Hardika said, I think first of all, I would like to say that I don't think there's any course which prepares you for anything long term in life. I mean, and then the Anant Fellowship has influenced me in so many ways. Like I said, like now, because I've, been in that space where they really, the impetus is on questioning and exploring and actually learning from the experiences of others. I think that blueprint of exploration has stayed with me and it will always do. For example, I approach everything in life with a sense of curiosity and a sense of humility. And although it might not be the best approach in terms of how traditionalists think about a lawyer, or it's thought of to be like, a lawyer has to be really aggressive and very egoistic and arrogant. But I think this brings me closer to the truth of things, and this is my way of seeing it. And I believe that I am able to get to the depth of emotions and get to the depths of people more easily, because I'm a better listener after the fellowship. And I always say that when I go and argue in front of a judge, it's not just me arguing, but it's also all the people that I have listened to over the years. It's all the experiences combined of the world around me and the world that shaped me, that is arguing in front of the judge in order to convince him. So it's not just me arguing, but it's the world trying to convince him to get the result that I want. So this is how I feel like the fellowship will change you as a person and will set you up to get where you want to get in life. Right, that's my answer. Yeah.
Dr. Ashima.
Yeah. First of all, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. I'm sorry, I have a lot of background noise which might be getting in the way, and I hope you can hear me clearly. First of all, thanks to everybody. I mean, just it's amazing to see the questions coming in here, and of course, lots of people, asking about the both our Anand Fellowship and also, about this particular webinar. So let me just quickly say, one of the things I, as a faculty, have learned a lot being at the Anand Fellowship. And I think one of the most important takeaways for me and what I have learned being here is it's not simply enough, we are not simply here to impart information, and, but rather to help our fellows not explore, but also learn how to learn. And this is so critical in a world that is changing at a ever accelerating pace, right? I think back, I'm of course older than everybody here. Think back to where I started and the kinds of technologies that we have access to, including AI, which many of you have referenced in the questions, right? And the ways that it is going to transform, the labor landscape. I think it's very important to be able to grapple with any new situation that is thrown at you, and for that, the sort of two twin pillars, first of all, of interdisciplinarity and a focus on this kind of research mindset, right? The ability to take any situation and sort of figure out the major parameters and make good decisions, which is really at the heart of what we do at the fellowship. So I would sort of end on that particular note and over to Pawan, who has also been one of our analysts.
Thank you so much. So as we come to the end of this webinar, on behalf of entire Anant Fellowship team, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our brilliant panelists, Hardika, Dr. Ashima and Varun, for sharing their insights and experience with such clarity and purpose. So your perspectives have truly enriched today's conversation. And thanks to our attendees, thank you for showing up with curiosity and intent. So your presence makes these dialogues meaningful. As the Rig Veda reminds us, Ano Bhadra Kratvo Yantu Vishvata. Let novel thoughts come to us from all directions. May we carry today's ideas forward with openness and action. And before we close, a quick but important reminder, final round of application for the Anant Fellowship is now open and the class of 25-26 begins in just 4 weeks. If today's discussion resonated with you, this is your moment to act. So we invite you to be the part of the community shaping the future through design, architecture, policy, and sustainability. Thank you once again, and we hope to welcome many of you to the fellowship. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Master of Ceremonies, Pawan Raj, signing off. Bye.
Thank you, Pawan, for organizing this.
Thank you.
Yeah.